Okay, so here is the parts mainly laid out. There may or may not be a few things in here, but as we go, you'll see. But mostly, you know, you're going to probably need a drill just for a couple little basic things. You can see here, and I'm not going to worry too much about the dimensions because I'm going to have a list of all the parts down below. You can see here the PVC pipe that you're going to need. I do believe this is like a half or a 3/4. I'm sorry, 3/4 inch. You got a 1 1/4 sink tube. I believe this is also 3/4 dowel rod, and you can see the various washers and stuff that you're going to need. These are these knockout seals. This is what makes the end caps. This is what I like to use for the end caps on the hilt. And again, some electrical tape and all your stuff here for your saw. And now here's some more secrets. You guys were asking about the control box on the hilt. This metal right here, see, you can already tell this is going to actually be the control box on the hilt. And you can find these strips at Home Depot and places like that. And of course this little piece of wood right here, and you'll see what that comes in for later. But guys, this is mostly going to be our Return of the Jedi saber, our ROTJ saber, all right here mostly. Okay, now also too, take these out of my pocket, there's also some arrow heads for some practice arrows. You can see there's some different sizes, colors. Those will be to be determined. So alright guys, I'm gonna get this kind of cleaned up. I just wanted to lay out some of these things for you. I'm gonna get this area cleaned up a little bit, and again, I'm just on a back porch, a few basic tools, and probably a tape measure. I didn't lay out a tape measure. I figured you guys could probably get one of those yourselves. Alright, so the first step we're going to do is we're going to start getting some of the main core of the saber. This actually is going to be the core of our saber. This is what's going to help us to sort of be able to accomplish what we have to accomplish, because obviously the shape of this saber is very unique. One thing for sure is you guys will have to score these. If you notice these right here, you can see they have a ridge in them, these little grommets here like this. You're definitely going to want to score these. I believe these are also 3/4, and you'll see how these play out. Okay, so one of the things you're going to want to do is the core. Okay, the core is very important, and this is going to be the whole secret of the saber. Nobody out there has been able to figure out how to do the grenade section, I guess you call it, or the ribbed section of the hilt. And now I'm going to show you my little magic trick, the secret of what's going to bring this together. And this is something you're going to be able to get all these parts over the counter. So again, you're going to start with actually your little grommets here. So the first thing you'll do, you're going to bring this down. And again, I kind of know about where this goes. You can do some more measuring, but you'll see where we go with this. And then you're just going to start layering your stuff, just like this. See, just start alternating these 3/4 washers. And these actually are M18 metric washers, M18s, okay? Just start alternating. You can see how exciting is this. You can see where we're going with this. I mean, look at that. You can already see where it's gonna go, and it's gonna give you that ribbed effect without you actually having to lathe anything. That's what the beauty of this is. It's the whole magic of coming up with this awesome stuff like this. Now, if you really wanted to, you could probably put some E6000 or some epoxy in the middle of this, and you could probably epoxy all these together, and I may go ahead and go back and do that. Right now I just wanted to show you guys the layering. So continue doing that, and you're going to use what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the grommets. So if you start with 9 of the grommets, you should have 9 of the M18s, I believe, because you want to end with the M18. And altogether this is going to give you probably about 4 inches, or just a hair under 4 inches roughly, and that's about what we want. Okay, so as you can see here, we got that section, and we still have more left over because again we've got the rest of that hilt on there. And again, you may find that you may have to move this section down a little bit, give you a little more room, but right now I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to try and go ahead and go with this. Alright, so that's it for this step. Probably for the next step, what you're going to want to do, there's a couple things. This is going to be sort of your next layer. Alright, and you can see here it pretty much goes right over there. Alright, now there's actually a little bit of gap in between, so I'll show you how to take care of that. And then you can see here, ultimately this is how we're going to end up. Okay, so the first thing you really can do, you could start with this. It doesn't matter either one. I like to start with this, and this is where you want to be as precise as possible. Now if you have a miter saw, you can just saw that down and probably have a perfect 90-degree cut. If you're like me and you don't have those tools, you're going to want to measure yourself. And what I did is I went about 4 inches. 4 inches is about the grip, and that is where I measured. That's where you're going to lay in your part, and that is where you're going to end up cutting your part. Now some people, you can do some tape if you want to protect in case your saw jumps over. If you want to protect it from any scratches or anything like that, it's probably for the best. So we'll take a moment and we'll tape that up, and then once you get yourself some tape, again this is just for protection, and I just really want to make sure that I don't scratch anything up, especially on this side, and you'll understand later on why. I'm just taping, leaving that line exposed so I know where to cut, and there we go. Alright, I'll go ahead and make the cut. Alright, so once you get your cut, and you see I used a little bit of tape on both sides to make it stable, right here. But sometimes, you know, when you're using like the hacksaw, even with this, you're still not getting a flush cut, and that's what this also helps. So what you can do is, this is your flat end. You can measure, and then you can start measuring different areas and see exactly where you got to file down at. So you're going to start with the lowest measurement, and that's where you're going to file down to. So in this case about 3 7/8, but you just start working on filing down. Just make it as even as possible. You want this edge to be as straight as possible. And that's it. So once you cut your piece and you kind of file and make this, you know, kind of flat, it's not perfectly square, but this is just a do-it-yourself job, right? So you got this. Now you're going to do the same thing with your PVC, your 3/4 inch PVC. Now you probably see the tape on here. So what I did is I wrapped this, and you want to count the number of wraps. Okay, so I did 3 wraps, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, and now you'll be able to put this right over, and it kind of fits it. It gives it where it's snug. It kind of fills up that gap. Same thing with here. You're going to count and on the gap between this and this, so far I think I figured out it's about 12. So again, you'll want to come here, you want to put your tape on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? Now, you take your piece, and you might have to work it just a little bit, kind of push some of the tape down. Just get it started. Now you can pretty much get it over snug. Now, your hilt's going to be on here pretty snug. And you can see it's right up there. Now, of course, at this point, you could do some epoxy and glues in here, glue and epoxy all these pieces right here. But now you can see here, you can already see where this hilt is going. You can see we've already got the pommel, or the pommel's up here. Now, I'm sorry, the pommel's going to be down here. But you can see here, this is probably too long for the pommel, but we can always trim it up later. We can cut this. Same thing with up here. If we got to cut it or whatever, we should be fine. But you can see we're on the path. Now, you're probably wondering about these threads. Well, we're gonna be tackling the control box section real soon, and you're gonna see the difference. Now, the control box is made out of these trim strips that you can get in Home Depot. And again, what I'm going to do for the power box on here is, this is going to be 2.5 inches. So I'm going to measure 2.5 inches, and we're going to go ahead and get it a cut. All right. Okay, once you cut your piece off, it's going to have some bad looking edges. Again, this is where you're going to take your file and just start working on those edges. And again, if you feel uncomfortable around any of this, make sure you use proper protection. If you need to put gloves on. But I'm just filing some of this aluminum down, just trying to make it look a little more straight. I'll work on this for a little bit. I got some more filing done on that. The important thing is, once you make your cut, you're going to want to measure it again. And I'm right at 2.5 inches. So, out of your remaining pipe, where you cut before, this is where you're going to measure 2.5 inches, and this is going to be part of the clamp. It almost has like a Graflex style clamp on it, so we want to make that clamp. So we're going to use this and this to make the power box. That'll eventually go on here. And again, you can see where, whatever. But you can kind of see how it's gonna start to look, how it's shaping up to look, if it would even stay up there. I'm just trying to demo stuff right now. But you can see here how it's already shaping out to be. Alright, so now I'm going to work on getting my clamp cut right here. I'm going to cut this. Oh my gosh, that was nice. I'm going to cut, yeah, right? I'm going to cut this for my 2.5 inches, and we'll see you on the next day. So this is going to be our clamp. And of course, once you cut your 2.5 inch clamp, again, you want your pieces to measure up. So you can see here, this is going to be our clamp section. Now, you might be wondering, Josh, it's the same size. What are we going to do? How are we going to make this a clamp? Well, you can see I've got it protected. Alright, so what you're going to want to do is get on a level surface and just mark yourself a straight line. Okay? Now, this is the tricky part, because you don't want to get hurt. And then you might want to, probably going to have to free hold this. But you're going to want a nice and gently just gently score it right down that straight line. Now I know there's a bunch of you out there saying, wow, Josh is not he's not doing safety. Again, this is just I've done this quite a few times.
You can always wear gloves or unrippable gloves.
Some of you might have vices that you can use. You can do different things. So me, I don't have a lot of tools, so I'm just being careful, taking my time, just slowly working my way through it. Okay. All right, so once you cut through, you'll see here it kind of naturally opens up a little bit, and of course that's going to allow you to now slip that piece over. Now you might have to spread it a little bit. You'll have to kind of spread with your fingers. Just be careful, don't hurt yourself. But you can see here where it's starting to go over top, and that's when that's how I make my clamps. Okay, so spread this open just a little bit more. Now if you're worried about scratching this up, you can always do a little bit of protection on there as well if you wanted to do some tape, especially maybe on the end that's going to be glossy. Now I'm just going to take this off. We'll go with this in here. Alright, so as you can tell, this will end up being our clamp. Okay, so you can see how this is going to go here. All right, and then we'll ultimately be mounting this right over top of the seam. That way we get this nice looking clamp just like that, and you'll see the seams on the clamp just like you do kind of like in the movies. Again, I try to at least come close to movie accurate as I can. So looks like my measurement's off just a touch, but for a home job it's not that bad. Now when you have this separation, you might have this misalignment where the edges sort of misalign. You might have to actually, when you put your epoxy, you may have to put a little bit of epoxy under here, or E6000, push it in place, hold it in place, and then put some tape around there while it dries, and let it dry to where the seams are lined up. Okay, now right now I don't have any epoxy on any of these parts, so I just wanted to show you guys the direction that I'm headed with everything. Alright, so that's our clamp. Okay, so now you can see what I did is I got everything prepped, and this is just I kind of stripped off everything else. I've got this prepped here, and what I did is I actually took a little bit of some 120 that I had off a mouse sander, a little bit of 800 grit, smooth, you know, that way this is pretty smooth sandpaper. And first I did the 120, and then I went over with the 800, kind of smooth this out a little bit. And like I said, it's not a huge thing. So all I'm going to do is just a very simple part of the process is we're going to start doing with the black. And we're basically going to spray paint most of this. Sorry about that, it's a little windy. We also got the lawnmower people out here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of test spray. Here we go. trying to get that first good coat on here of black.
Look at that nice gloss. That black.
Well, it's glossy now, but it's going to dry flat. This is actually a flat black. So we're going to let that dry, and we'll come back to it. We'll put on another coat. Okay, we're back for a second coat. Now, one thing I want to cover while I'm doing this is putting that second coat on here. Short, quick strokes. Now I'm going to set this down to dry for now. Being that it's warm out, it should dry quick. I want to point out that I've got like a flat black, and I've picked out like a copper, because if you really look at the ROTJ hilt, you really notice it's kind of more of like a copper-ish color than like a brass. Seems to be the popular color, so I'm kind of picked out one of this. Again, all these paints, I've had some left over from previous builds. So cost-wise isn't too bad. Now, this is a bug. This is part of a, as you get up toward the emitter, like the emitter, the neck piece. I'm having a hard time talking today. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint that. That's also part of the brass piece. Of course, you'll see what I'm talking about later. Alright.
This way.
So I'm just going to go ahead and start getting this sprayed down.
And make sure you guys wear gloves or maybe some protective eyewear.
Safety is always important. That's why I'm not using any of them. Alright. But no, you should. You see I'm just using my snow shovel. And also too, just to let you guys know, this was prepped with sandpaper, a little bit of rough sandpaper to get some of that writing off. I'm just going around, hitting it up. There. Alright, we'll let that dry. Okay, so we got our copper. That's going to go here. Okay, that's going to go that part. So, this, what we did was we put the painter's tape around here. You can see we put the seal, the little gasket, of course another M18, and then we put some painter's tape, and then I just took a razor and carefully, again, you want to measure, and you can do it just a little bit, the width of it, you can do just a little smaller than the actual copper piece, but that's where you're going to end up putting that copper ring on here. So again, you can see we did the gasket and the washer. The washer keeps things pretty straight along with the gasket. Now, this part here, we just go ahead and paint, spray paint that copper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to mask off my, my hilt, and we'll go ahead and paint this copper. Alright, so in this section where we are, let me show you here. You don't have to zoom in really, but this section here, you can see we got the copper done. You want to go ahead and cut you a section of your normal tubing. So cut you a section, and this of course is where you're going to put your washers and your top emitter piece. That's all glued together. And I figured I recorded doing this section, but I lost that footage. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to use the knowledge I gave you in making this other. Obviously, underneath here is going to be a layer of PVC pipe also. It's going to be layered under there. And of course, the end of your wood core is going to be right here, right there. And then everything else, like I said, is glued on with E6000 and cured, so it's pretty secure. So you can see here the layering. You have your black you've got your rubber gasket, your washer, and of course your copper tubing. So you can see how the layers all come together for that look. So that's what makes it really exciting. The next thing you really want to do also, and I haven't done it yet, is you're going to want to get you some glue, some E6000, put on here, and go ahead and glue your piece in here. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You see I'm just putting just a layer on here. And this is just what I do. Again, you can do more or less. And I'm just kind of turning this around a little bit so it kind of spreads it in there. I'm going to get a little bit down on that too. And it'll be just enough to really keep it from spinning. That's really what you want. Alright, so one of the biggest questions I get all the time is how do you make your control boxes? And obviously we covered that earlier. Right here we saw this is where we did our clamp, we did our control box. Now as far as the actual insides of the control box, this is what I'm getting ready to show you. Okay, now you can see here also too by the paint job on here, I've been kind of going for like an aged kind of look, so I'm not worried about it looking perfect. Now inside this bag I put some parts. There's a couple things you're going to want to remember for the future. Okay, your metal strips, alright, that is when you take your bracket piece here, you can actually cut the metal with the hacksaw. Be careful, I cut the end of my thumb off when doing it. Also, I cut these little pieces of metal that's from the same strip. Okay, and then I just kind of filed on them a little bit with the metal file. And you see I've got an arrow, I've got the letter B, and I got the letter F. And what that means is I'm looking at my saber, okay, then this is going to be to the front, meaning the emitter. And then I want to be able to have that F on the inside of the box. Okay? And this is where it's a little tricky at times, but it's not going to sit in there perfectly. I'm just trying to show you for example. And then the B is going to be toward the back. The arrow is on the underneath side toward the front. So right here. And I've filed it to where it presses in place. Okay? So now you have a nice little emitter box. You're going to have a metal front and a metal back. Now, I'm just showing you how that kind of fits in together. Right there. Alright? This wood piece, remember we got these wood strips? The wood strip is going to lay in here, and I filed it to where there's just enough clearance. Okay, and what this is going to stabilize your little end pieces. Okay, so I'm going to use the E6000. We'll glue that in place. We're going to glue our front and back pieces in place, and that'll give it a nice sort of flush look to this front here. Same thing with that back piece. Again, that's what that wood is in place for, is just sort of keep everything nice and together. And then you'll be able to glue your control box top. However, before you go gluing this top piece, let us drop that. But before you go gluing this top piece, you've got to do the secret paint job. That's what's going to bring it all together. Alright? So So let's move this stuff out of the way. Here. All right. So to accomplish our secret paint job, the first layer that we're going to do is going to be a black. Okay, it's going to be a flat black. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to get the black. I'm going to look over the parts. All right. So you take your spray paint. Try to get nice even strokes. I mean, I'm not the best painter, but all right. And you're gonna let that dry, which by the magic of editing, we'll come back and this will be dry here in a few minutes. It shouldn't take real long to dry. Again, especially out on a nice sunny day. Probably we'll just give it a few minutes here, and then we'll get ready for the next layer. All right. So now that we got it back here, again, this is dry, but again, I'm probably not going to mess with a whole lot. Ultimately, I'm going to let it cure mostly overnight, but I want to get the next layer now. Here's the secret to how I do my buttons, which is another question always about the power box. So now in here, I just bought a little dollar comb, and I'm just going to use the big teeth. All right, small teeth, that's going to look weird. So I'm going to put the big teeth, I'm going to lay it right down over top of my part. And for this one I picked like a copper kind of color because the ROTJ saber is more copper than like a brass. Alright, spray some dog food.
Nice.
And I'm just doing some quick strokes right over, boom, just like that. Quick strokes, and then hopefully, now, see how it's got a little blurry right there? That's probably not the greatest. So what I'll probably do is I'll let this dry a little bit, and then I may go ahead and paint over it with some black. But you get the idea. You can pretty much lay this down. Now, probably if I really wanted to, I could probably press this down a little harder and get it to be a little more solid, which is what I'll probably do. But this is what I did on my other sabers for that power strip, and you can kind of see how it's looking, how it'll ultimately look. Alright, so we'll come back when I get this fixed. Okay, so you can see here that we're back. I painted it. Again, it's not going to look perfect, but you know, it kind of gives it a little bit of an aged look, but I did fix it. This has definitely got to cure overnight. And then one thing I'll probably do toward the evening is I'm going to probably hit it with just a little bit of clear coat, that satin clear coat. Okay, so while that's drying right here, again, I'll move it to my drying spot later. One thing is the pommel. Okay, a lot of people are wondering, how, Josh, are you going to make the pommel for the ROTJ saber? So this is the pommel section, okay? So again, you're going to end up cutting out a piece of length for your pommel, okay? Now, to get your, if you're not sure what the pommel looks like on the ROTJ saber, just look it up. You'll see it's got some ridges to it. To make those ridges, I bought this little square wood pieces. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut yourself a small section. You're going to cut 6 out. Okay, once you get those sections, take you some sandpaper. This is just like what is it, 120 grit. You can even use 60 grit, and you'll just start sanding those sections, and you're going to get yourself an angle. Okay, so you're going to sand this down, sand it down. Again, just imagine that small piece. I'm not going to do it because I've already did it. So you can see here it's starting to form an angle. So ultimately what you're going to do, what you're going to end up with is this piece right here. Okay, you can see I put an end cap here, and you can see I've got 6 pieces that are all angle right here. This is going to be our pommel piece. Again, not perfect, it's not metal, but guess what? It works. So to get your spacing, you're going to take a what I used is the body tape like you use for when you weigh yourself or tape yourself, like a body, you know, that flexible tape. And I just wrap it around there. I divided it by 6 and I marked out 6 even spots, and then I glued it. Sorry I didn't really go into depth on that. Again, I'll let you figure that out yourself. So again, I'll let you kind of figure out how that works yourself. But again, this is about what you want to end up with. And then I glued this in. I hit it up with some silver spray paint. And again, just for this purposes of doing the DIY, you can make this better. I just wanted to get it done, and so I can show you what that pommel is going to end up looking like on that hill. So I'm pretty excited. Also, while we were waiting, I went ahead and glued in those end pieces along with that. So I'm waiting for this to dry. I also, if you can see more silver on here, I actually hit it up with just a little bit of silver spray paint. Again, I'm not worried about the overall finish. This is going to get hit up with some more black also, and again, probably a little bit of aging. Now, there's many different versions of the saber out there. There's like a movie prop version, which this section in the movie prop version, okay, this section is black. Okay, there's not as much copper. It's a little different up top. And then of course you see like a real shiny, more of a commercialized version. I kind of like both. So what I did is I wanted to kind of combine them. So I did like the copper look up here real well. And I wanted to do the black. And also on the movie prop version, there's like a little greebly. Okay, it's sort of a pointy greebly that's going to stick out here. For that, we are going to use an arrowhead. Okay, I found like an old arrowhead. It's a practice tip. I've got a variety of them that I had in a box of parts laying around. So that's what's cool about stuff like this, is that you can find things like this. I'm going to drill a hole and we're going to actually mount this in here. And I believe it's like kind of like on a 90-degree angle from the button box. So somewhere in here, we're going to drill our hole and we're going to sink this in here and we'll glue it in, and then it'll stick out. You'll see. We'll get that done. But that's what we got coming up here. There's on some of the other commercialized versions, they've got some buttons on the side of the button box. We may try to do those. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I have an idea of what I'm going to do possibly here. I know on the movie version, you look, there's kind of a copper ridge versus, you know, like the Graflex one. So I'll probably tape this off and I'll probably spray paint, and this will be copper, that'll be copper, there'll be a copper strip here, copper strip there. Yes, if you see the pool in the background, that's the dog pool. So no, we have no kids playing in that. So back off with the comments already. So anyways, but yeah, there's going to be some copper lining around here. You know, you can make this your own version. I didn't really worry too much about the math, about doing exact measurements. The button box probably is maybe a little shorter. You probably could shorten the overall hilt a little bit by a few little sections, trimming it down, trimming this button box down just a little bit more maybe. Again, that's all up to you. I just sort of went and sometimes when you get building it, you have to start making sort of adjustments. I did sketch it out beforehand, but I'm really happy with the way it's coming along. I really am. I think it's going to look pretty cool. It's going to have sort of an aged look. I don't want it to look brand new. So in the end though, it's going to look, I think it's going to look pretty cool. You can see here, there's going to put about 5 wraps of tape That'll make this a snug fit. Oh, and there's a washer. There's a washer that goes in between here, so actually it'll be like this. So I think all in all, you can kind of see how the finished product is turning out. It's going to be really, I think it's going to be really cool. All right, so we're waiting for all this stuff to dry. Also, I probably, if I really wanted to, I probably can go ahead and glue this on here. I'm trying to think if I need to, just trying to think if I need to do anything else. I know I need to do a little bit of that copper painting, so we may hold off and not finalize that glue job on here. All right, so there we are with that. And I can't really do this part until I think I get this in position. Once I kind of finalize where on this hilt I want this positioned, you know, I may look around, see what angle I like the best or something, I don't know. But once I get it finalized and get it glued into place, then I may go ahead and drill and get that greebly glued in. We'll get everything else finalized and glued in. So we're wrapping up. We're getting close to it. We're getting close to the end here, guys. Some of these little glue jobs, little things like that, sometimes that's what makes the project so long, waiting on these little parts. Plus when you work a full-time job like I do, these projects can take a little bit of time. So other than that, we'll wait for some things to dry. In the meantime, guys, get your pommel made. And again, if you guys, if this tutorial is not exactly perfect, this is my very first step-by-step one, so if it's not perfect, feel free to always comment or, you know, ask me questions in the comment section or anything like that as well. Alright guys, while we're waiting for everything to dry, obviously we got our little control strip here, and on the control box, on the very ridge, I want to make that copper, so I took some tape, taped all this off. So you want to tape your part off. I give myself as much of a straight line as I could. Again, I'm not stressed about it being perfect. Some of you guys, you may want to really focus on trying to make this thing perfect. Again, that's completely up to you. I'm just trying to get it in the ballpark, guys. So, save all your criticisms. All right, there we go. Now I'm just trying to get that again. Try to get that ridge, that top. Turn this around. Alright, so now we got this part here. This will dry, and again, then we'll be inserting this into there. That's going to give us our control box. Again, and you can hit up everything. When it's all said and done, and you got all your stuff done, you know, you can hit it all up with a little bit of satin clear coat for the most part. So, pretty excited about it. Alright. Pretty simple.